Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the last Board of Ed meeting of the winter. It's March 15th. We return to public session. Could we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would also note this is our first meeting with our masks optional. It feels good to be here, and now you can see what Heidi finally looks like.
Yeah.
Can we bleep that out? I'm not sure.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Well played.
Lovely. You thought of that one.
How are we going to top the meeting after that? It's just not going to happen.
That one beats
We're done. We're done.
Good night.
All right,
It wrote itself.
we're adjourned.
It wrote itself. I have to pull a George Costanza, right? Know when to stop. So first, we'd like to welcome Ms. Spencer with the Student Council Report.
Hello. The high school musical All Shook Up took place this weekend. It was a fantastic show, and all the kids performing and the crew worked hard to make a wonderful show for everyone who watched. We hope you got to see it. The peer leadership has their annual retreat at Sharp Reservation on Thursday and Friday. Seniors in the program will also be able to go on the retreat this year, as they have not had the experience. This Sunday at 7, the Human Rights Club will host a vigil for Ukraine at Somers High School. And from the counseling department, counselors will be concluding individual student course request meetings next week, and the full mental health team will be leading career lessons and DBT Steps A lessons through wellness classes. On Thursday, March 10th, the counseling department offered a BOCES career and technical education information session tailored to our Somers High School schedule. The program includes the past and current students sharing their experiences, as well as information from a work-based learning coordinator from BOCES. That program is available for viewing on the Guidance and Counseling webpage under Recorded Presentations. In athletics, our Tusker athletes had a very successful winter season. At the state competitions, McKenna Mullins placed 3rd in the uneven bars and 6th all-around in gymnastics. Jay Wilkinson competed in the state competition in diving and the 100-meter butterfly. Brian Luciano and Jared Google placed 4th and 25th respectively in weight throw. Brian Luciano also placed 8th at the Nike Indoor Nationals track meet, winning the All-American status. Spring sports started on Monday, and the sports schedules are up on the calendar. Meet the Coaches Night is on the 21st. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. And I want to say thank you to yourself for also representing the track and field team. So thanks, Megan.
That brings us to our first public comment, which is open, but I'm not sure that we have anybody here at the moment.
I'm sure there's nobody here.
I think we can see. So we will move on to the central office report.
Thanks, Chad. We'll go ahead and get ready to jump into the budget here. Chris will walk us through. Again, we did the non-instructional 2 meetings ago. We did the instructional the last meeting. This is just kind of marrying the two of those together. So some adjustments that we'll see in here, but other than that, it's fairly straightforward. So, Chris.
So just going to talk about the budget development process, the 2022-23 proposed budget, the historical use of appropriated reserves and fund balance, and then the contingent budget for next year. And then we'll finish up with the tax certiorari review, which leads us into the capital reserve fund proposition. Again, this budget development process that started back in October, maybe. Various meetings with all the departments, and we've been presenting on the budget since December, and this is our last budget presentation before we would look to have the board adopt the budget in April. Again, all leading to a May 17th budget and trustee election.
And these documents are all available on the website.
All the presentations, yep, are available on the website, and the public budget document, which will be prepared in the next, before the budget, will be also available online. So this slide shows the currently proposed 22-23 budget. The first column has the budget for the current year, 21-22. The next column has what was proposed 2 weeks ago. And then there's been some additional modifications to the budget for the budget presentation tonight. You see from the 2 weeks ago to now, it was just over a $300,000 increase as we continuously make adjustments to the budget for, as we get new information, as we tweak things for salaries and benefits. We're getting new interest rate projections for our energy performance contract. So we'll continue to make those adjustments even through the next month before budget adoption in April, just so we have the most accurate numbers at that time. And then you'll see for the use of reserves and the debt service transfer, so to make up some of the difference that we had there, we are projecting an increase in the use of reserves. Again, that's the amount that we use to kind of balance the budget. Typically at year end, we don't ever have to actually use those reserves, as we usually have a little bit of a surplus, somewhere around 2% surplus in the budget from year to year.
Chris, excuse me, I'm just curious about that when I saw that, because you have an increase in use in reserves, yet I see a 12, almost 13% increase of non-property tax revenue and a 2% increase of tax revenue, and then, you know, why do we have to dip in if we're getting an increase in revenue?
So we are seeing a large increase in state aid. We're seeing a large increase in foundation aid. We're going to see that again for next year as well. However, this year we had a large decrease in our building aid, which then kind of offset some of that increase in our state aid. We've seen an increase in our sales tax revenue as we've kind of come out of this COVID time, and those have certainly improved. So that is why you're seeing a larger, that 12% increase overall in state aid. But again, that state aid number that we have is just a fraction of the budget. The majority of it comes from the tax levy, which we're, again, projecting at about 2% currently. I don't know if that completely answers your question or not.
Chris, I'm thinking at the last meeting, we spent a fair amount of time talking about those expenditures that are increasing significantly. So just between the health insurance and the salaries, you're just short of $2.5 million increases from the get-go. So you're $2.5 million increase there. Then you throw the TRS, you're over that. You've got some, we talked about technology, a little bit increase of it this year as well, too. So those costs that are not really controllable are things that are causing that large increase. And then, like Chris said, the loss in building aid.
What do we lose in building aid? How much?
Around $650,000.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, it looks like $3.5 million of increase in revenue from the tax levy and the non-property tax revenue. So I'm just trying to figure it out in my head, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I agree.
So
the revenues for the tax levy and the non-property taxes equals the actual budget.
Correct.
So
yes.
the 7.5. Oh, so you're saying that's in addition to? So wait, our budget's higher, or what's the? Why we have the use of debt services?
The use of reserves and the payment in lieu of taxes is included in that revenue non-property tax number.
Got it. Okay.
Both of those numbers are included in that total revenue non-property tax number. So when you're looking at it, it's just the revenue non-property taxes, and the tax levy is going to equal the amount of the expenditure budget. So when you're seeing those increases in the use of reserves, that's built into the increase in the revenue for non-property taxes.
There you go. There you go.
So you have that on here just to highlight how you're balancing
Yes.
everything. The other option would be to not use reserves and increase the levy more.
Sure. And currently, the maximum tax levy that we could increase with the simple majority is at that 3.92%, which would almost double the amount of revenue that we could generate via the tax levy. But again, we're looking at keeping it at that 2% and then kind of using the reserves to balance the budget. And
Got it. So our non-property taxes increased by about 1.1 million, and then you have to offset that gap with the 850,000.
with the Yeah, between the use of reserves and the payment in lieu of taxes?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The loss of building aid that we were talking about previously, that we spoke about quite extensively at our last meeting, that will be picked up, as we said, in the next couple of years. And so that will be offset in not this next year's budget, but the following.
So
Is that correct?
that building aid, we're going to lose a part of it this year.
Right.
Well, part of it for 22, 23. We'll lose the remaining part the following year.
Right.
So then that is going to be gone as far as building aid that we're seeing for that project. We still have the debt for that project because we refinanced back in 2008, I want to say. So we're going to have that debt for a few more years, and then that's where we'll be looking to go to the voters for the next bond project. And when that debt comes off, then we'll put the new debt on, and we'll start generating building aid on that new debt.
And I know we talked about this before. You refinanced, the building aid only goes so long, so now the financing extends beyond that, and that's why we have the loss of building aid. However, we're still better off having refinanced. Financially, that was still
Right, at that
good
time.
for the district.
Yeah, reduce the payment. It's going to extend it out X amount of years, but you're going to end up paying less in the long run, even though the building aid's going to run out sooner than the debt's going to fall off.
Great. Anything else? Any other questions?
And this slide just highlights the historical use of the appropriated reserves and fund balance. This year, this does not include that transfer to debt service. That's why it's $200,000 less than if you look at it on the previous slide. This is just the actual appropriated reserves and fund balance. And if we went back even further, you'd see that it's been up towards close to $2 million at some points. Again, it's used to kind of balance the budget, and typically at the end of the year, we don't typically have to use that money to actually cover any costs.
Yeah, and what this allows us to do is basically, it's our shock absorber in a $100 million budget, lets us has this kind of bounce back and forth a little bit. So, for example, later tonight, we'll see roughly a $250,000 transfer to handle the increased energy costs that we've got going on right now. And we're anticipating it's going to increase more next year. So instead of changing that now or increasing the levy, we're going to increase our reliance on reserves. Still within a number that we've worked well in before, but we believe that will ultimately come down. Just not sure when it's going to come back down. So instead of permanently putting that tax increase on the community, we don't. We use the reserves here to go ahead and allow us to kind of manage that up and down. So, and allowing us to avoid impacting program and things like that.
And with the legislature looking to approve the state budget in the next couple weeks, we'll get a new state aid run, a new projection, which could generate a little bit of extra dollars, which then we would look probably to reduce that reliance on reserves and bring that number down a little bit, depending on how much we actually receive from the new state aid run. This slide talks about if the budget is not approved by the voters in May. So this is a contingent budget, or possibly a contingent budget. We have three options here. We can resubmit the same budget for another vote in June. We can revise the budget and submit that for a vote in June. Or we can go straight to a contingent budget with a $0 tax levy increase, and there's no additional vote that is needed at that time. The numbers down here you'll see. If we went to a contingent budget, we'd have to reduce the budget by about $1.6 million. That's the amount that we are increasing the tax levy. And $1.6 million is a substantial amount of money. There's only so much in supplies that we can look to reduce. At that point, you're talking people and programs that might be impacted by possible contingent budget.
So those are services cut and human services specifically in this district.
It's one of the only ways that we'll be able to cut $1.6 million out of a budget. The other option would be to increase our reserves to an amount that maybe we haven't seen before. So. And I know we've talked about this tax certiorari review, which kind of leads us into the capital reserve fund in the next couple slides. Again, these tax certiorari that we have here, we have almost around $6.7 million currently in the reserve. There are two large tax certiorari's that are still pending. We still have not seen much movement on those, and they make up about 80% of the potential liability out of the tax certs.
Chris, why are you saying they might be settled soon? What
I said we haven't seen much movement on them.
it says in here, there are two
Oh.
sectors that may be settled soon.
So, yeah, our hope is to get these things settled. Every year that goes by, it just adds to the amount of money that we have potentially need to refund the taxpayer for these properties, and it's a substantial amount of money that goes by each year. So,
But you're talking about the soon part, the wishful
Sure.
thinking
Yeah,
of
sure.
soon.
The part with that, my understanding is there's some court dates coming in the
Please
next
hope.
few months. And so it's either going to go to that, or it's going to be, kind of settled outside the court. So at least with one of them, that is on the docket, my understanding is. So that one could be coming in the next few months.
One of the properties, was it the IBM property where they wanted to put
STEM school.
that school, that STEM
Correct.
school? What's going on with that? That STEM school come back to life at all, or no?
no, not that I've heard.
Not that I've heard, yeah.
Yeah.
And the negative impact of this extending another year, they continue to pay the tax based on the way it's currently assessed for them.
Yes.
And that's what they're challenging. So they're going to, next year, they're paying this higher, what they're saying is the higher tax amount. And we don't know exactly where it'll be settled.
Right.
And that's why every year that it goes on, it's increasing the potential
Backlog,
liability
yes.
of what we would have to pay back.
Right.
Which then prohibits us from kind of funding some of these other projects that we need to also tend to.
But we currently have the 6.7 million in reserve. The problem being that there's 22.7 essentially that is being grieved, right?
Sure. Yep.
And then the likelihood of that grieved amount being owed by the district is you said last time, I think 10, 12%?
Well, historically, we've landed between 10 to 20%. That was pre-COVID.
Before.
I think kind of everything's off the table now to see what actually that number will be settled at, either by the courts or outside of the court by the town. So we would have typically felt confident with that number, but right now with it during the COVID period and such a large properties, it's really unknown. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
And with that, then we have talked about the capital reserve fund that we're going to be, there's actually an item on the agenda today to have the board approve the proposition being put on the ballot in May to establish the capital reserve fund at $10 million with a probable term of 10 years. And again, that kind of goes through how it will be funded through surplus funds at year end. And then many of the items that will be considered with this capital reserve fund include athletic upgrades, tennis, softball, baseball, some classroom renovations, especially at the high school, and then some of the district-wide paving, and that's all buildings that have been identified in our 5-year capital plan. And that alone is, we're not going to be able to hit all of this with this possible capital reserve, but it'll at least get us started. Then when we do go and have another bond project, that it will lessen the amount that we need to borrow to fund some of these projects that need to be completed.
What's our priority in terms of what needs to be completed in which order, if we had to sort of go through this list?
How much money do I get to spend?
I mean, just for the community's sake, right?
Yeah,
To talk
so the
about-
priority here would be, again, if we were able to complete and fill this bucket at $10 million, from a priority perspective, our paving is we're okay. We just need to get started on that work. So we still have a few years. We're doing some pothole filling and some hot oil of the cracks and stuff for filling across the district. So that one, from that safety perspective, we're okay. We've got to manage some of the curbing and stuff that we've got going. From a classroom renovations, that really is looking at to have those be more 21st century learning spaces for our children. So from an academic lens, those would, I would say, be priority from an academic side. From an athletic upside, priority there would be most directly our tennis is not on the property right now. We're using Reese. And then softball is on here, but it really is woefully behind where it needs to be. Baseball has some specific safety items. So each one of those, we'd be able to start if we couldn't do them all. So it just depends upon, but safety would be that first piece. We want to make sure the grounds are obviously safe, the classrooms are safe, and their playing surfaces are safe. So,
Thank you.
sure. And then as we went through a little bit based on the budget here, just want to remind the board and community, one particular piece in here we'll be hearing a little bit later in the spring from the Learning Office is we do have the expansion of the World Language Program at the elementary school at SAS in the program for next year. So we're coming a little bit later in spring. Learning Office has started their work on that, and they'll be doing a Tuskegee University family focus here in a few weeks, and just some of that conversation along with math and some other things. But inside the budget, we will be starting, not finishing, but starting our exploration of world language at the intermediate school next year.
That's great.
Also, in our work too, not directly necessarily right here, but we have some funds still available from our recovery dollars from the COVID federal funds. And so we'll have some funds that we'll be earmarking for the next 2 years to help increase our mental wellness support for our children, particularly at the secondary level right now. So we'll be working on that in the coming months. So again, supporting students as now, not exactly sure how we were going to start the year, heavy into the academic support with after-school opportunities for reading and math. We're going to continue a little bit of that next year as extra opportunities. And now we have a clear understanding, a better understanding of some of these process groups and opportunities our kids need to have through the school year. And sometimes they process group through an event that may be happening in their life or going through the experience that they went through. Some of those may be repeated, as well as in-house trainers for staff members, be it on mental health first aid training or restorative practices training, though. That certainly is a piece that we're looking to use the remaining funds that we've got for the next 2 years to fund that source of an additional mental health support person in the schools.
Have we, has there been a noticeable uptick in that need that we can document already, or is this that's something that's kind of coming together?
Yeah, so I'd say definitely one of the things that anecdotally, certainly from every classroom teacher, there's an absolute increase in the classroom. So how can we support more directly the classroom teachers to give, they have the care for our children, certainly, and then we want to ensure they have the competence to help support the children, so we need to give them the training necessary, development through appropriate, and as well as also the ability to support students in smaller groups when a teacher is in a classroom with children or doing their planning time, working as a team of teachers, they can then pull a group of students together and see that. So we are certainly seeing an increase in numbers of support for our kids. And again, time is our gift right now, and so the reality is that it's going to take some time. If you look at a sixth grader right now, really the last 2 years of what typically would have happened at elementary level, lots of kind of gaps, and a lot is on social pieces. So those are the pieces, or even a freshman at the high school right now. We were just able to go mask optional, as even, talking with, some of our elementary schools. Like, some kids haven't been in the cafeteria to eat proper for the last 2 years. It's like, oh, it's a big deal. That's like a lot of social learning and how do you go through these, and they haven't been there in 2 years. And even working on projects together now that we're able to do that work together. So all that social time, and you can't make that up like overnight. So this again is a resource for us to go ahead and make sure the collective team has the most appropriate training support our kids, as well as we've got some focused on that area as well too. So yeah.
I have 2 freshmen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Am I right?
I hear it. Yes, I do.
Yes. Okay.
You are right.
Sorry, Ray.
At least anecdotally, from my
yes,
experience.
Yes.
Ray, quick question on the world language. Is it just one specific language at the elementary school?
So right now, Claire Comerford is working with the world language teachers, and so they've been working through that. There's kind of 3 different models that they would look at, be it a true immersion program, which wouldn't be in a district like this. That's some place where you've got a strong second language as a good majority, and then you've either got an exploratory kind of a piece, or you're focusing on some specific skills in those grade levels. So that's a part that team is going through right now, and then they'll be coming back and giving an update to the board a little bit later in April. I believe the current thinking is to looking at a singular language there. I also believe they're going to start at 3rd grade, to go to 3rd and 4th, so then we can build it up to 5th grade in subsequent budget years. So the intent is to go 3rd, 4th, and 5th with that. Again, that's kind of their current processing, and then certainly want to look at our languages that we have right now, with Italian, French, and Spanish where we are right now. Our Spanish population is certainly significantly increasing in the home. We have not quite, but about 18 to 20% of students are Hispanic in our homes. We are seeing more and more homes speak a second language, and those homes happen to be Spanish. So from a local look and feel of the school community, that's it. And then we have to be realistic too when we're going down to roughly 800 kids at the high school, and we've got 600, 580 here next year. What's the capacity of the organization to handle that? But the world language teachers will kind of bring forth their recommendations. They're working with Greg Duncan, as he's been here in the past as a well-regarded, consultant and looking at world languages, best practices and structurally as well as programmatically. So that's what that team's looking at.
Yeah, because I just keep thinking if you're going to add world language at the elementary level, the learning goals and outcomes should be different
Yes.
at the high school, a secondary, because
Yes.
they're learning earlier and sooner.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you would certainly understand the licensure piece that comes in as well too. Having a world language teacher now is extremely challenging at times, but then also somebody who can teach at the elementary level is also challenging as well too. So we want to make sure licensure, we can get somebody there. We may even have some folks on staff who have that downward extension, assist in that, and then kind of possibly backfill at the high school level. You're absolutely right. Like when we pushed it here to 6th grade, we'll need to then work with the elementary in the same regard so that those children are coming up not in a 6th grade that they historically done because they should have had
Right.
in a
There's
few
not
years.
learning
3
the
years
same
at least.
thing, right?
Yes.
Increasing, incrementally, there's
yep.
some change.
And I would say that the team would also like to extend it down to Primrose campus too, just not quite yet to take that big of a double leap, but that's going to be on the heels, I would say. Much as
By
we-
doing the single language, though, does that effectively wipe out the other two languages?
So with that part, especially with the Romance languages, those languages can really kind of you can get a lot of cross connection in those. So you're looking at something that has some similarity in there, and the team is already looking at what could that 5th grade look like, so there can be an exposure to those other languages, and the students would have already had some experience in the Romance languages. So they're looking at some of those pieces right now. So
Do we have world language teachers who are dually certified, like in
A
French
couple.
and Spanish, or French and Italian?
yes, we have a few across the way. Again, challenging to have that. We are fortunate to have a few of our teachers who are able to do that, and then even that elementary extension is challenging. And a key piece we know we're really looking at is it needs to be in person. It needs to be with children, with a live instructor there at the same time. Also, the model is looking at perhaps I'm the 3rd grade teacher, Chad is coming in and teaching world language. We're doing it together. So this is a kind of a team experience. I'm learning the language too, just along with my children, and I've got a colleague here will come 2-3 times a week, so I can learn along, and then hopefully I can reinforce that in a very natural way also across my other content areas. So that's the model that we're looking to starting in next year as our own kind of foot into this very shallow step first, but we want to get that started. And even this year, we started an after-school world language club at the campus, and there are 25 or 30 kids just even during COVID who went after that. So,
No, because I think it's great. I think, early language acquisition and exposure, brain development, but I also wouldn't want us to add something we don't see a change. Like, what do we want at the end of the high school career for kids who are in Spanish or French? Or do we want them to be conversant? Like, so
Yes.
what would change at the secondary level? So, like, I know when a kid graduates Somers High School and has taken so many years of Spanish, he or she or they will be conversant at the end. Because if not, then what is the point?
in one of our longer-term goals, once that gets in there solid, we believe and would anticipate we'll have more children who actually take 2 second languages as they come out of 8th grade at a pretty competent level and say, okay, look, I'm going to change to perhaps another language in high school, and then I can get 2 second languages at the high school. It's a very rare situation we have now. That, as well as all the research that we look at, learning another second language, in particular Romance language, will make you better in your home language. And so we certainly anticipate that will help also with our home language, and the ability to really carry a conversation and be able to be adept at having that. And starting at an early age allows that to take place better. And again, that's a piece when I talked to Greg Duncan, he's like, the reality is, Ray, if you want the target to be where students come out with some really basic foundational skills of a second language, you need to choose a language. You need to do that at minimum 2, ideally 3 times a week. Other than that, don't bother. Then just kind of do an exploratory thing and that kind of stuff. So there's really, like I said, 2 different paths. We're looking more at a path to have those skills developed in those 3 grade levels before they get to the middle school, so they can come up and extend that to the eighth grade, so that they can, if they want to take a second language, or even get more adept at that. So that's our ultimate goal, and I would certainly anticipate more children would take 2 second languages with us than they have in the past.
Do you anticipate, Ray, and I know that this is not a curriculum conversation, and we will have these conversations
No,
at some
it's in
point.
the budget. It's a very important piece that it's in the budget to bring this additional support.
But this bringing it down to SIS is different than bringing it down to Primrose. And I think everyone would agree that earlier, right, we just said early exposure
Yep.
to foreign language is important. So my wonder for you is, when do you see this going down, stepping down to the Primrose campus? Is it going to be the same sort of procedure that we started with the high school, the upper grades, and then the lower grades in the middle school?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple of pieces working inside of here. One, as the high school gets smaller a little bit, is there opportunity to shift FTE over to one of those schools? So they're just, next year they start a little bit down. That world language team, when they had 2 retirements 2 years ago, they refilled it with 1. So there have been overages right now that 3 teachers have taught. That allows us to not bring in another teacher on for a year and then say, sorry, we don't have a position, and we lose all that expertise. So the reality is we may have some movement from one campus to the other if the licensure is there. I would say that honestly, if the team, they'd be great to start K through 5. It's just the capacity and the financial part of that isn't there right now. So the next logical piece is, what can we more directly guarantee? We have a better chance of getting 3 through 5 to connect with 6 through 12, and then the next piece would step that down. And again, with that part, do you start it at K1-2, or with one staffing, we would have a really good opportunity to start, even if you start at first grade, you'd need an FTE there to cover the first and second grade. So those FTE questions will drive what comes forward. So, yeah, and I would say that when our team comes here a little bit later, in the spring, they'll be able to give a much better explanation and description than I did briefly here. I did fear that it was warranted, because it's a significant change that I know the board has talked about over the last number of years of getting the world language into our elementary schools.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think we're generally excited about the idea. As you start talking about it, it certainly raises lots of questions, and so I definitely look forward to the spring and getting more in depth into that, especially if you think of someone who's maybe a bilingual family. How does this affect them going through? That might be a great benefit for the classmates, but are they getting the challenges and learning that they need also? Hopefully.
Thanks, Jen.
In the question, in the spring, we're going to be talking about the social worker, psychologist that's going to be for the COVID funds, right?
Yes.
All right. Can I just ask, when we do, can we try to identify, because we're adding a lot of more and more social services, what does success mean, and kind of how do we measure that? How is that person after the end of next year that they've made a difference, in that?
Yeah, so I would say, like, with our social worker team, as well as with our, sometimes they'll work in like our True North or our support program in the high school. Much of it is avoidance of failure, dropping out of school. And so one of the targets we can certainly look at is are those students able to stay on path with their colleagues or their peers and stay on with their cohort? Because if the mental health isn't provided, many times those students don't stay with the cohort. They may drop a class, they don't pass them, and then all of a sudden they're off of the cohort. So that is certainly one of our key pieces, is are we able to keep children with their cohort, and the mental health allows us to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think probably for myself and other board members too. I mean, we're getting asked about the head count and adding in a lot of social services piece of it. I think we just need to be able to quantify the impact that some of that stuff is having, right? That it is making a difference, whether it's what you're saying that hey, we saw the grades drop, or we saw that the kids not able to keep up. We've brought that up, and we're maintaining that now that we've added these in here. So that's for the spring meeting. If we can come with some kind of just what the ideas are and measurements for that new role next year.
But that would be true for any addition. That's
Any
when I have a
addition, yeah.
world
Yeah,
language, I
yeah.
say the same thing. I was like, why are we adding world language? Because we expect to see kids become fluent in, or whatever it is that you come up with. If we had social services, okay, we expect to see changes in these areas because we've seen, issues come up or something. So I think any addition we make, you're substantiating why we need it. Well, how do we know it's actually working now that we've added it?
Yeah, and certainly we'll continue to look at the graduation rate. That is like the indicator for us. Do our children graduate from our schools there? And I can certainly listen and see where the board is at, what information you would like, in particular with our social work team. That is the key part where students, promote out of each school and then ultimately graduate out of the high school. We would say that we're just seeing more and more need across our schools for these types of support. We've had historically, now there's just more that are in that group that need these support.
Yeah, so there's something that's triggering the need for more that you're monitoring, right? And it's kind of great, how do we know when we've reached that capacity of more, right? So again, you have a measurement that's asking you for more resources, but is that paying off? Is it actually, have we calmed the issues or whatever it is? So that we're not in the weeds all the time, but if we could just quantify that for, I know myself and I'm guessing others, and
Yeah,
I know
for sure.
in the community, that would be helpful. I know you don't have the answer now. I'm just asking for the spring and the future meetings, if we could just think about that before we present.
So like an indicator of success that's not graduation at 12th grade, but rather at each year. So maybe even the same indicator that they're using to identify the need for the program would also be the indicator that they're looking to see reduced as evidence that the program is useful. So for instance, if students are absent or tardy or whatever sort of attendance, engagement, whatever that metric is, looking to see that metric is shifting somehow in a positive way that demonstrates that the use of these funds is
Correct.
substantial, yeah?
I mean, so my example, I ran a service desk, right? And
Yeah.
what I would look at, okay, great, I knew each agent could handle about, 30 cases a day, on average. If that case volume or load went up, right, I knew things would probably go down. So quality of service, I'd also monitor that going down. I had key indicators to know when we were doing well and when we actually need to add resources. And that's kind of just what I'm asking for.
Yep. Smart.
Adam, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your team was doing what?
Just say customer support and technology.
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's the
it's-
part I struggle with from a humanistic lens and a child and all the missing and the moving pieces and parts, to hear like Megan speak tonight and say, oh, look, we have our psychologists coming into our campuses tomorrow to deliver DPTA lessons to the children. And that's where I'm challenging to measure, not that we can't, and just how many now students have skills to apply when they get challenged with life and things come their way, and do I now feel like I have some skills that I can apply
And I-
to the
It
role?
could even
And
be
so
just
those are
like
some of the
attendance,
connections
though.
I'm trying to.
Attendance,
That
like
was
showing
perfect.
up and
Yeah,
just
that was
having kids
perfect.
saying like, yeah, that's great.
Nick, I just the part I was trying to, that's the part I got to come up with. I'll get there. And so that's the example that I got, and I'll get there.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to try to quantify, right?
Yeah.
But it is just, it's something we just have to figure out what that
Absolutely.
is, right?
Absolutely.
There's
Yeah.
some kind of, I don't know. I don't know what it is even, but there's got to be some kind of way to measure it. And it's definitely not easy, right? But it definitely is something that, even a feeling of kids, hey, great, am I prepared to go to school? Even if it's, hey, we see it years down the road where we're interviewing our college students or post-graduation. I'm not sure what it is, but there should be something that we just got to try to start figuring out what we're tracking to be able to show that what we're doing has the value add and our investment, it's paying off.
And I think, Nick, that's where it'll start, kind of just, not probably the prettiest, but let's start the conversation. Even right now, our director of counseling is looking at how can we do some basic screening we've got going for reading, writing, and math, things like that. How can we do the same things for students' overall social wellness?
Yeah.
Screening, say, okay, so here's these programs, here's the support things they're putting in place. It's not necessarily a direct correlation, but hopefully it's at least a relationship. You say, look, those kids are either staying or improving based upon the level of services they get. And that's where we're working right now, and with our mental health team, and then Phil Kavanaugh, to say what would be a reasonable tool that we can help either students self-report and or students teacher observations, is saying, okay, here's where the child is at this point in time, and here's their experiences. Are we able to improve those at a grade level? So I think we're wrestling in that same area as well too. So we'll bring kind of good enough to criticize forward, and we'll kind of then see what the next iteration.
Great,
of
appreciate
was.
it.
So, yeah, thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. On to the financial reports. Do I need to officially accept the warrant?
Just acknowledge receipt.
Just acknowledge receipt of the warrant reports. statement of revenues, treasurer's report, and the budget status report. Thank you, Chris.
Hey, Ray, what's the story with driver's ed this year?
I'm sorry?
Driver's ed?
This year, no, we're not going to, where are they going?
Mayapack?
Mayapack, correct.
Still has their
See,
program.
80,000 budgeted for it, but
So there would be, we're not fully determined next year what we do. That would be offset by a revenue stream that would come in for those individuals who take it. So if it doesn't happen, there's no expenditure, nor there's no revenue. So I think they're still trying to identify what happens for the 22, 23, if I'm thinking of it. So.
I thought they would have it.
Good question.
Okay, the approval of the meeting minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, having received copies of the minutes of the meetings of February 15th, 2022 and March 1st, 2022, hereby approve the same.
So move.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Our board action. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the attached personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? All in favor?
If that's right, just one piece.
You have something?
Yeah, just real quick. Roman Catalino would have been here tonight. You see his resignation is on there. He's retiring. And so he is actually being, well, not replaced, but Mark Haddam is following in his footsteps. And so there's actually the statewide conference that he is at today for athletic directors. So he's introducing Mr. Haddam to his cronies across the state and the athletic directors. So otherwise, he would be here. So I just wanted to recognize that.
Cronies or colleagues?
It's a dynamic. My father was a athletic director.
Oh, very nice. All in favor?
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
Opposed, abstained?
Oh, yeah. I heard all the ayes.
Bev.
The CSE, CPSE meeting recommendations. So be it resolved that the Board of Education, having received the copies of recommendations of the meetings as listed on the attached memo, hereby approves the same.
So moved.
Second.
And noted that the cost of these services are all contained within the budget for the 21-22 year. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Well done.
Thank you. The business consent agenda. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves the attached business agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Anything you want to highlight on this, Chris?
Just a donation we're receiving from the Primrose PTA for a new laminator. And then we're disposing of the old laminator that is no longer in use. And as Dr. Blanche mentioned earlier, just a large transfer to cover the remaining cost of heating fuel for the year, as prices have kind of skyrocketed over the last few months as we're coming to an end to heating season, but there's still a deficit that we need to cover in that budget code.
Additional justification for the reserves, yeah?
Possibly.
Can I get the KPIs on the laminator?
Yeah, and good timing for the energy performance contract.
Absolutely. That will certainly help with the cost avoidance as prices have gone up.
Yeah, the numbers tracking. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? No. The Health and Safety Committee. Okay. Be it resolved that upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints the following individuals as members of the district's Health and Safety Committee. Can I just say as presented? As presented on here.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is this a new committee? This is not a new committee, is it?
This is a new committee. It's different than our district-wide safety team. This committee deals with more of the day-to-day kind of health issues that may arise. Noise complaints, smells, pest control,
Noise complaints from whom?
could be coming from a piece of equipment.
His office.
I know, I'm wondering,
Who knows? All those different issues that could be disruptive. And when we do have a capital project going on, we would ask the architect, construction manager, contractor to be a part of those meetings as well to address any safety concerns or health concerns that people may have.
so to distinguish this from the other safety committee, it would be,
So again, this is more like the safety committee is dealing with more with the swipe card access, the lockdowns, the very much broader safety concerns. This is, I'd say, geared more towards the health issues for some people. And
They wouldn't be looking at the plan like the other committee does. So the other committees looked at the state-required safety plan. This group is not. So that's the biggest differential I would see in there.
Yeah, two
And then
very different
even the EPC contract coming on board, we're going to have contractors in here, and so we want to, Dan Corrado brought, this, they said, look, Ray, this is really kind of the best practice to put this in place. You have two different parts in there, so, Dan Corrado helps with our kind of safety and security as well, too, so.
Is this more reacting to things that are occurring and being observed
no.
and reporting, or?
No,
Although I'm sure that this committee's going to get a lot of complaints from anybody standing next to Kevin Gaddotti at any time.
he was sitting so quietly over there. It had to bother him.
He didn't say no.
What's,
Policy says that we have to have this committee.
yeah, right. So Nancy just reminded me that the wellness policy that we have says we have to have this committee. So that's kind
and
of.
that's a NISBA requirement.
Yeah, it's much more of a operational piece, where the other one's kind of set in the strategic lens. This is really much more of an operational piece. That's where you're seeing, teachers on there and their head maintenance and grounds person on those and things. It's much more of an operational. And so, again, when we get our contractor in here to do our next project, there'll be set up scheduled meetings to making sure that, the workplace is as safe and secure as it needs to be, so.
And it looks like you also have a parent representative, which is
Yes.
great. Did you invite folks in the community? I'm wondering if people are watching and they see these committees being formed.
I think right now, just there were some folks who expressed interest, and then as we move forward, because we want to get it established as soon as possible, and then as that continues a cycle forward, we'll go ahead and put that up on our website, and any folks who are interested in future policy or future committees, and please stay in those areas, so.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Next up, the agreement with Westchester County for the use of voting machines. So be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Summers Central School District approves the agreement with the County of Westchester for the use of certain voting machines and equipment for the May 17th, 2022 annual budget vote and trustee election, as presented, and authorizes and empowers the district clerk to execute the agreement. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education authorizes and directs its officers and employees to take all actions necessary to effect the purposes of and to cause compliance with the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, discussion?
Later, I have a little comment.
This is standard protocol.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so now the capital reserve fund that we've been talking about. Let me get to I am not going to read all of this unless necessary. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Summers Central School District hereby authorizes the following proposition to be put before the school district's voters at the annual meeting and election on May 17th, 2022, that seeks approval to establish a capital reserve fund pursuant to Education Law, Section 3651. A capital reserve fund to be known as the Capital Reserve Fund 2022, and the ultimate amount of $10 million plus interest, earnings thereon having a probable term of 10 years. And as presented, the rest of it.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This is to put the resolution on the ballot so the voters can vote on it, correct?
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
And this is not asking for additional funds, but simply setting up a fund that is reserve.
Yes. Setting up a
Why it's
safe.
called the reserve fund.
Clarifying it for anybody who's listening.
So there will be three, well, we'll get into that later.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. The memorandum of agreement between the Summer Central School District and the SFA regarding national board certifications. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, hereby approves a memorandum of agreement between the Summers Central School District and the Summers Faculty Association dated March 11th, 2022 regarding the National Board Certification Stipend.
So moved.
Second.
Could you guys explain that a little more then?
Yep.
Please.
The national board certification itself. So this particular stipend recognizes teachers who've gone for that certification from a national perspective, and in the process they have to go through portfolio development, portfolio approval, and passing of that. So at the last contract negotiations, before we hit in here, this was one item amongst a number of stipends that was missed, but that was always intended to be involved in there. So that's why it's reflective of the same change for all the other stipends that were involved in there. It just was one that was missed amongst the others.
And how many of our teachers are national board certified teachers?
I think right now we have 2 teachers who are national board certified.
Which is an incredible achievement, right, to be national
Takes a
board certified.
significant commitment on their part, for sure.
So we
Absolutely.
should really do something to celebrate those 2 teachers who have gone through the effort to be,
We just did.
I mean, in addition, yes.
That was it.
Party, Liz?
Approved.
Coming to your house?
I think we should celebrate them. I think we should say them by name and congratulate them for their,
Both these
efforts and
teachers have been in the district before I was here, so I think at that time when that did take place, certainly the building administration of the district, did do those things. It's been atypical for folks to go after that so much right now and stuff like that, but, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the policies for our second reading and adoption. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education of the Summer Central School District does hereby accept the following new policy for a first reading.
Sorry, that should read the
That's-
following policies.
This is
Sorry.
this is the second reading, correct?
Yeah, this is, yeah,
Okay.
sorry. That should have read for second reading and adoption.
Right, for second reading and adoption, and that's the 5440, drug and alcohol abuse, 5450, student safety, and 5450.1, the notification of the sex offenders.
So moved.
Second.
And as a second reading, we've discussed this, or any other,
Did you look through the language?
Yeah,
that
we did look through this, not really that critical.
The language adjustments? I think they were made. I think Nancy
Yep.
made the
Yeah, they
changes
were.
to the,
They
yeah.
may, yeah.
Yeah.
oh, that made sense.
Do you want to review them, or I think we're good.
No, I think we just
Yeah.
accept them.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Don't drink or do illegal drugs on school grounds. That should be the policy. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was
Right,
the-
right,
Okay,
right.
so now for the first reading. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education of the Summer Central School District does hereby accept the following new policies for first reading, as listed you can see it on the document.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion anyone has about these? These were
Yeah,
these were mostly from NISBA, correct?
The
Identify.
5220, Chad, it's listed as an attachment as communication, but it's actually listed as a policy of student expression. So I don't know if that was intentional or not. Does that,
So in the line for the PDF itself, the document name.
yes.
Gotcha. And then I think that was one of the adjustments that was made where it was used to be student communication channels, now changed to school-sponsored student expression.
Yeah, just as
So
long
that
as it's
was the-
filed that way
yeah.
it's,
We'll update that, sure.
right?
And that okay, nope, that's good. Anything else?
Nope.
Nope. All in
Uh,
favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? So those will come back for second reading at the next regular meeting, correct? Okay, and then the policies reviewed. So be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education, having done a review of board policies, does hereby accept the following policies to remain as is with no changes required at this time. As listed, the dismissal precautions, privacy, and objection to release of directory info. So this would be adding a review date without
Yeah,
any
review date,
changes to
right.
it.
So moved.
So moved. Okay,
Second.
set.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And then policies for suspension. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby accepts the following policies for suspension. 5400 student welfare, 5440 R drug and alcohol abuse, 5451 supervision of students, and 5454 student automobile use.
Sorry. Did we so move this yet?
We didn't move it yet. No.
So moved.
Second.
I have a question about I'm sorry, Nick.
No, go ahead, go.
The automobile use, didn't we discuss that, or this was folded into a different, was this in the handbook?
Right, so that's where it's referenced specifically in the handbook, and, you know, I think the policy is 2 sentences long, and it is in the student handbook. Yep.
Just wanted to make sure, because I remember that vaguely.
When do these all go into effect? Like now, or?
In a few,
So once the board,
Yeah.
go ahead, Nancy.
Because did we do final on the drug and alcohol abuse one that's being replaced by this one?
So you already did the 5440. This is just the regulation that goes along with it. It's basically redundant because you had already kind of approved the 5440 one, so.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
That was final, though, it was, okay.
And this is just kind of not necessary because you did the work on the other
Just want to
policy
make sure that we're
itself.
not,
Exactly, got it.
yeah, no gaps.
Okay.
All in favor?
all right.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstained? Okay, that brings us to our second public comment. But we don't have anybody who is here today, so
Good.
it looks like we don't have another public comment. So we move on to board member comments. Anybody?
Well,
Anything they'd like to share?
I have a couple of comments. This voting machine vote we just passed remind me that I had some ideas. I always wanted to speak in a public forum, since I can only use the school board as my public forum. I can't go to Congress. I suggest that the government should issue to every voting citizen a smartphone dedicated for voting. Nothing but voting. The phone comes with apps that will provide you information from school board, town board, whatever election that, you know, you're supposed to do your civic duty and vote. This will increase the possibility of voters' attendance to the voting. In fact, the Congress could pass the law that you must use the smartphone to vote as an obligation. That way you cannot, you know, walk away, say, well, I don't know about anything. And this smartphone can be very inexpensive, and it's not that much money. And the technology is there to provide the apps that you just, you know, pick up. In fact, it would also encourage the election process to be efficient and can be done multiple times so that you can guarantee a majority sort of election at the end, rather than sometimes people get elected for less than majority, okay? You can vote this every week until you reach a majority. Okay, that's my first comment, okay? Hopefully somebody in the public will hear this. My second comment is sort of direct to Chris, and the Westchester Putnam School Board Association recently sent us they always do that, a data sheet on school budget, okay? which is very useful, and they also put on the website, so a lot of people do read them, and I'm sure in our community too. In this data, it compares all the school districts in Westchester and Putnam on their budget and enrollment and stuff like that. One particular number, I think in the years past, I know people have discussed in the board, and is the fact that you take the total budget divided by number of enrollment student, you get a number as an indicator how much money is spent per student, which is a reasonable sort of an indicator. Of course, it doesn't give you all the details. For example, if you look at Pelham as a school that my grandkids are in that school, and they have a very low budget. Okay, I think if you do this school is small. Their budget is like less than 30,000 per student, but they don't have school bus. Okay, they walk to school, things like that. But among northern Westchester and Putnam, I picked a few schools that was comparable enrollment, like 27 plus minus 100 student to compare. I have a quick sort of a number here. One school is Rye, okay, the Rye school. In terms of the Rye school, the number is 34,000. And Yorktown is 32,000, okay? And Somers is 37.1 thousand. So we're pretty high. I'm sure we justify, okay, and this is not taking this number just to sort of raise the issue, but I think we should get this number in their table. First of all, you know, this table, Somers blank, which is probably not good. You arouse people sort of wrong direction. Why is that not data not there? Secondly, I think is a parameter probably in our budget process in the future, we should do a chart and do a comparison, okay? I think it's very, very meaningful, at least from your own school data and the budget, okay? How the increase and so on. I think comparison certainly is also helpful. Okay, that's my comment. Thank you.
Anyone else have something else they want to share?
I'll just keep it quick, but Chris, I know a lot of hard work between you and the rest of the administration going into this, so thank you for the detail and the accuracy and precision that you've shown throughout this process in years past.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No. I would just say, tonight we did not have anybody here for our public comment, and I don't think that's a positive or negative thing. It's just a thing. But I do just want to say that one of the biggest parts of our role is to listen, and so when you do come and you do talk and we hear you, and that's what we're here for. We're here to listen, and if you can't make it, it's easy to send us an email or contact us that way. So keep that in mind, but we appreciate, even if you don't always like what you hear, we appreciate, and it's important that we do hear from people. And so when we do get to the budget vote, there will be 3 items to vote on, which will be the budget itself, the
Capital Reserve
Capital
Fund
Reserve
proposition.
Fund proposition will be a separate item, and then the voting for 3 trustees.
Oh,
So
perhaps
I
we
do
should
hope in,
ask Nancy to tell us who are the candidates are so far.
well,
we have.
we're not there yet until I think
We're not
April
there.
18th.
April 18th
I mean, at
is
this
the
point,
deadline.
do we have
Yes, you.
just me?
You're the only one who's turned in your
But there have
signature.
been other people
Oh,
who've
my goodness.
taken,
Okay.
We have that each year, and we,
Then I
But we won't know until April
Yeah.
18th.
I will comment on that. I say that shows my devotion, diligence to the board. I am the one that submitted my petition early on.
Your devotion is not in doubt.
No, but I think it's important that we talk about who has or has not.
Yeah,
or not
I'm
even
surprised
who.
no
It
one
doesn't
has
matter who it
submitted.
is, but that there have been people that have picked it up. I think it's important that we.
There are certainly
I
some
hope so.
individuals who have.
Yeah.
Historically, we do not have those names go out until it's done, it's completed, because many times folks choose not to. And,
But to say that there are.
There are some
5
individuals who have.
things, right? Like Chad, I'm hoping you have also, right? I mean, you've taken
There
out.
are 4
and-
petitions out.
Okay.
Yeah,
How
if she
many?
does, she will tell us
Okay,
how
good.
many are there, but only one so far.
So the only reason that I think it's important is that if there are 3
Did you have
spots.
something to say? I wasn't sure.
Well, no, I mean, if there are 3 spots, you want to make sure that there are at least 3 people from the
Yes.
community that are
Oh,
going to
yes,
show
of
up
course.
to be
Okay,
part of it.
I
That's the
will
only point.
urge people to,
You know what I mean? Like,
consider
just-
serving
There are 4
for the board.
petitions out so far.
Right.
So we'll see how many come back.
You got to have people driving you nuts and asking you lots of questions. What are you going to do without us, right?
Works.
All right. Do you have anything?
Just take us out, just as we heard, the play at the high school last week was great. It was definitely back to, I think, what folks were used to. Our students unfortunately had Saturday because we were not sure with that weather, but they did 2 shows on Sunday. And then Peter Pan Jr. is coming here next week, so again, middle school kids are getting kind of back to that routine and that work, and so looking very much forward to that. And then spring sports started up this week, so that's a good piece. We have our new athletic program with our girls flag football, so that started up this week. And then looking at, again, when we kind of come back the next time for board conversation, we'll have a little bit more fuller conversation on that world language from the learning office as we had a little bit tonight. And then I want to say that certainly it hasn't been that long since we've been mask-free. I just wanted to thank, our administration team and, our parents and our kids. Everybody has done a very, very good job from my perspective of walking through this. And I know some folks would like things to happen instantaneously tomorrow. We have like furniture in storage we got to get back. And so it's not like, I've said before, it's like sitting in my garage. We got to, some trailer fulls of stuff we got to back to school. So we'll get it back on here and get our classrooms and our cafeterias back in line, but everything's moving in that direction. So, again, I would commend for our success so far, again, our people, little guys, and then, everybody above. So it has been certainly an amazing challenge to the organization, individually, collectively. It's 2 years ago this past Sunday that we shut down our school. And so, and then we kind of started warming it back up with all these things, and lots of things we learned about through this, but you will continue to hear as we move our district forward. The reliance upon our relationships is what got us through this, and we're going to double down on that basically as we move forward and try to improve our practices, being better relationships with our increased mental health supports, as we were talking about this evening, because of where we're at. Looking at our caseload for, in particular, our secondary teachers being at a little bit level, looking at 100 or less. Our elementary schools, we talked about earlier a few meetings ago, instead of being 24 or 25, we're getting those to be 21 or 22. We're really absolutely convinced, and we have plenty of evidence of how we got through this was because the reliance on the relationships we have with each other. Even our most recent training on a large group, we had almost 50 individuals here in this very space learning about restorative practices and how you can implement that in schools and in classrooms K through 12. Again, those are based foundationally on relationships, and when relationships get damaged, you need to repair them. And so that is a absolute clear picture we want to send forward home to our community. And the work coming out of this, you'll see that work again, even as we looked at classrooms, the remodeling of spaces and stuff. As we get to that chance, how can we have people, learning together, laughing together, and being around each other in that regard? We have some rather archaic kind of spaces in our, not just in this facility certainly, or any facilities, but education-wise, it's a pretty significant change that has to be, in my opinion, brought in at a national level. You'll go to a school now that is built in the last 5-ish or even 10 years, significantly different than something that's built back in '69. it's just such a stark reality. So, and it does reflect the humanity of what we need to work on and get our folks together. And from a professional lens, we have certainly seen that our teachers, time and time again, and the work that they have forward and identified, be it in the middle years program, be it in refreshing our elementary reading program with Fontes Manel, they're doing it together, and so they're in that work with the support from the central office and learning office, and again, just relying upon each other. And also with our community, I wanted to just say I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to speak with some community members that, we've had some events in our schools over the last few months that were pretty stark and pretty not just disappointing, but just not acceptable, with the racist comments that were said, racist symbols that were presented, or just derogatory statements. I mean, it kind of was a fair amount of different things. And so some community members reached out and said, hey, can we have a conversation? And I greatly appreciate that, because there's not a lot I can do on social media. I need to be able to sit and have a conversation with our community members. And I was really appreciative of that. We had administrators from each one of our buildings was present too. So taking that information and reflecting upon that, how can we improve in our practices, it's how we're going to get better. I just would, again, say that's relationship, and that's building connections, and the only way we're going to get better is doing that. So I do want to certainly thank those families for doing that. And, across, again, in our schools, that every time we have a chance to sit and talk with either a family or group families or PTA leaders, whoever it may be, we're better for it. So I would see that continue to come forward. And again, as we went through this last 2 years of COVID, hopefully again, we're on the backside, we're not going to forget that. It's our people who will get us through. So thank you to the board again for everything tonight and the support above the budget, so we can take some of those next pieces forward to support the community and the kids. So thanks, everybody. And I don't know if anybody's chosen their bracket yet, but I think we're running out of time if you haven't chosen the bracket. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Blanche. Okay, be it resolved that this March 15th, 2022 regular board meeting of the Somers Board of Education be adjourned.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.